Welcome back to Fade to Chat, Golden Age Cinema. We explore the films, stars, and cultural moments that shaped Hollywood's golden age. I'm Marty Gensius, your host, joined by co-host Cindy Rotz, as we unravel one of cinema's most chilling psychological thrillers, the film that gave us the term that's still in everyday use, and frankly, it's being used more and more these days. Gaslight from 1944. And one of the things that stimulated doing this film for this episode was I had never seen it. And Cindy was real excited about it. And so this will be fun. I have a film that, there's a film that she's got that I haven't seen. So I get to sit down fresh and see it. Just to start, and then I'll get your impressions about it or things that you want to talk about. All the references are Gaslight 1944. And looking through some of the trivia on the film, there was a Gaslight that was done in 1940. And then they turned it over to George Cukor, who is a famous Hollywood director and was best known for directing women. Actually, he got a reputation of, in his movies, of really knowing how to manage women in a appropriate and positive way, versus other directors like Hitchcock was not known for that. So they really wanted to highlight that this is the 44 version, not the 40 version, to the point where, and this is the last I'll say, the studio Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer attempted to buy up all the copies of the 1940 version because they didn't want anybody clouding or confusing those two versions. They were unsuccessful eventually, and you can still see the 1940 version, but this is a 1944, and it's every time you search for it, you'll see that designation. So you picked this.
Oh, yes, I did.
Why?
I picked this movie because I like a thriller movie, but I don't like the violent thriller movies. I don't like the ones that keep me up at night. Like, well, it doesn't anymore, but Hush, Hush, Sweet Charlotte, when I was a child, Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, those movies would keep me up at night. In fact, I couldn't even watch them in the evening. This movie, it was so subtle. It was such a mind game. It still bothers me, but not in the sense that it keeps me up at night. It was more of it's obviously a psychological thriller, and I found it very interesting to watch again, just trying to really watch for the clues. It was so subtle with Charles Boyer and how he manipulated her. And I think too, because I'm watching as an adult, and some of the life lessons I've learned, I see it through a different lens now than I did when I watched it at a much younger age. So I just see it in a different point of view now, and it's a disturbing movie for sure. But I love Ingrid Bergman, and I think this is one of her best performances. And of course, she earned an Academy Award for this performance. And you're so used to seeing her as a strong character, a strong actress. And this was really a stretch for her. And I read that she was hesitant to even take on this role because it was such a different character for her. And I'm sure you found this out too, that she went to she actually studied for the part, went to a mental institution and studied a number of the patients. And there was one woman in particular that she studied and tried to imitate her movements, especially her facial expressions and her eyes. And I think she just carried it off beautifully. Again, she's one of my favorite actresses, and this role was just so very different for her. So I enjoyed seeing her in this part. And Charles Boyer, too, because you don't think of him as a villain. You think of him as this
Yeah.
leading Frenchman, this romantic person. So this was a departure for him as well.
Yeah, and I think George Cukor knew how to shoot a movie
Mm,
and used all the kind of symbolism that you could put together in a film that is a psychological thriller like this, which makes it much more popular than the 1940 version. And I started to notice that because, I watch movies and I pay attention to settings, scenes,
hmm
sometimes ignoring what the characters are saying, and that forces me to roll
Right,
them back because I just missed a
right,
plot point. I got to roll it back.
right,
What did they just say?
right.
But this was such a tight film. Um, I At the beginning I was like, "Where's this going? How long is this gonna?" It seemed to
Uh-huh.
drag, but it slowly picked up. Well, it picked up and kind of advanced the gaslighting that Charles Boyer was doing with Ingrid Bergman, and I watched it from the fact that I teach counseling, I teach
hmm
psychopathology. I found the interest that she went to the hospital and saw some patients to get characters and the expressions and the things that she wanted to do pretty
hmm
interesting. I guess that was really encouraged by George Cukor. And George Cukor had a couple of habits he did with her that she found frustrating. One was because movies aren't shot in sequence, they're
hmm
shot at different, like the first scene that was shot was the scene where she's at the train station and meets Charles Boyer and they have to kiss. That's their first
Right.
shot.
Their first
So
scene. Yeah.
what Cooker would do, he would go in and every day or before every scene, he would sit with the actor and say, "Now remember,
hmm
this is the story. This is how it
hmm
executes, and this is where we are in the movie." And in your story, so you kind of have to act appropriately.
hmm
Um, Ingrid Bergman didn't take kind to that at first,
Yeah.
and
No, she
kind of,
found that very frustrating.
yeah, she's like, "I'm not an idiot."
hmm
But so he pulled back on that, and then producers came back and said, "Hey, at the quality the acting has dropped in
Yeah.
this,"
Not working.
and they went back to that. I was
Yeah.
I liked this film more than I expected to, and
Okay.
I will tell you if I didn't know I had to watch the thing for this podcast and video cast that we were doing, I might have given up on it about 15 minutes in.
Oh, really? See, I
Yeah.
thought you would find it very interesting because of your background.
Yeah, well, I stuck with it and then
Yeah.
really appreciated the movie near the end. I mean,
Okay.
as it got close to the end. But I have a low attention span for stuff, and when you get into post-Victorian England, it's like,
Mm.
oh, okay. The film was shot in black and white. I don't have a problem
Yes.
with black and white films. It was actually nominated for an Academy Award for cinematography,
hmm
parentheses, black and white, because that was when the changeover was going in Hollywood to color, and they decided they couldn't give Academy Awards for only cinematography. They had to consider the medium that it was done in.
Mm.
So, the setting and the scenes. There were also nominations for the scenery and the how it was put together. So
Yes.
interesting, just interesting film to watch all around.
So here's an interesting question for you because I look at all the extra things going on, the visual, and I try to find things that are maybe hidden or don't make sense. In the very opening credits, did you notice the wallpaper background?
Not until I read the trivia at the end, and it was
Okay.
just before I was getting ready for this recording, and it's like I got the movie. I
How
need to
could
go
you miss
back
that,
at the
right?
beginning and the end. Yeah, how could I miss that?
Yes. How could you miss
Uh,
that?
why don't you tell our listeners about it?
Well, and of course the music too. I played it back a couple of times, and the music at first it was very sweet. It was like her singing the opera, and it was very melodic and just beautiful. And then all of a sudden, it was like a crash of cymbals and horns, and it got very dynamic. And in the background, again, it was a subtle kind of Victorian background, very gray and black and muted. And then this figure appeared, and it was a shadow figure. I'll just say it was a man, but it was a man with a above a woman, and she's like back at an angle, like he's either trying to strangle her or kill her with a knife. And it was that appeared in the background behind the credits as it was rolling. And it
Yeah,
also, the music change was very, very dramatic at that point as well.
I did notice in the title sequence that it started out with white lettering, and as it went
Hmm.
through, it went to black lettering.
Okay, I didn't notice
Um,
that. Good for you. Didn't
yeah,
notice that.
but I
Yeah.
read about the image of a man strangling
Hmm.
a woman, and it was the scenes at the beginning, at the end, where you see a gaslight actually flickering.
Uh-huh.
They
Yeah.
claim that in that you can see that image clearly
Yes.
behind it.
And
I watched,
speaking, I'm sorry.
yeah, I watched that. I watched the flame at the end because I was wondering if it was looped. Where
Mm,
they just do continual, they do a short piece and they continue to loop it. But it didn't appear to be looped. It appeared to be one continuous
hmm.
shot of the gaslight flame moving.
Okay. And speaking of strangling, at one point I forgot how her aunt was killed. She was strangled because Paula Ingrid Bergman talked about her beautiful face, and how her beautiful face was all, I guess, mangled and distorted from the strangling. And later on in the film, there was a scene where um, Charles Boyer was angry with her toward the very, very end, and he had his hands behind his back, and he was very angry with her. And he actually raised his voice. He rarely raised his voice during the movie, but there were two, three times where he actually lost his temper and yelled at her. And they showed his hands behind his back, and he was clenching. He was clenching his hands like he wanted to strangle her, but he was resisting. And I thought that, again, just was a subtle reference to the fact that he had strangled her aunt, and he was trying to resist strangling her as well. He was that angry with her.
So here's something that I looked at. I'm trying to look through the credits right
Hmm.
now.
Yes.
Um, the in the opening sequence where she is being taken away from the home
Hmm.
and she's 9 years younger, I'm like, certainly that
Yes.
cannot be Ingrid Bergman. It,
Nope.
and I'm trying to find out
I
who
can
that
tell you who
actor.
it was.
Okay, all right.
Because I thought too, I thought, how in the world did they make her? I mean, it was the exact spitting image of her. I thought that can't be Ingrid Bergman.
Yeah.
It was Terry Moore, Terry Moore,
Okay.
Mor. She was the young Paula. She was supposed to be 14 years old at the time. And this Terry Moore, I believe, is still living. I think she's like 97 or something.
Oh, wow.
But, and of course, she didn't speak. But again, they zoomed in on her face and her facial expressions, even the profile of her. It
Yeah.
was Ingrid Bergman for sure. I thought, and I thought, no, that just couldn't be. Yeah, Terry Moore was who it was.
You are going to keep me doing homework on this film because now I want to find out, is Terry
Yeah.
Moore still alive? Let me
Yes.
click and see. Yes, it's she
Yes.
doesn't have a passing date on
No.
her IMDb page.
Mm-mm.
That's wild.
Yeah.
Okay. Other things about the film. Not only Ingrid Bergman, but Charles Boyer, but Joseph Cotten, which I thought
Yes.
was an interesting choice. Originally written, this came from a play, is
Mm-hmm.
adapted from Patrick Hamilton's 1938 play. Writers were John Van Druten, Walter Reisch, and John L. Balderston. But Joseph Cotten, that was 4 years, about 4 years after Citizen Kane, and he played. I thought it was an interesting choice when I read about it. The character was written in more of a big, bolsterous kind of Scotland
Mm-hmm.
Yard
Mm-hmm.
person, but they needed to have the subtlety of a potential love interest with
Yes.
Ingrid Bergman. So they chose an
Yes.
actor that would suit that role better. Just an interesting choice for him. I think if you've seen him in his Citizen Kane role, he is does a really wonderful job in that. But this is kind of a more kind of stoic,
Yeah.
determined,
Yeah.
warm type of
Mm-hmm.
character in this film. Um,
And of course, he was so enamored with her aunt. You know,
yeah,
as a young boy, he went to see her perform, and um, we find out later in the movie that she had given him her glove,
hmm
and that's how he gained Paula's trust at the end. That he returned that glove to her, the missing glove that she had in her cabinet, and she never knew who her aunt gave that glove to. Just someone who was a great admirer, and it was he as a little boy, and then he returned it to Paula. But I kept looking him, and I thought, well, he looks so familiar. How do I know him? He was in Hush Hush Sweet Charlotte. Oh, and he was a very nasty person in that movie. He was a villain. He was vicious and evil. And I thought this is the exact opposite role. So yeah, I enjoyed him in this movie. He was very kind and um,
he
yeah,
believed
and
something was going on and he pursued it.
yeah, he just had
But
that gut feeling. And of course, um, Charles Boyer was jealous of him. That was another way he was controlling Paula. He was always, why are you looking at him? Why did you smile at him? How do you know him? Is he one of your past lovers? And she's like, no, I was just being polite. He just undermined her at every point every point in the movie. She is such a strong person, such a beautiful woman in the beginning. She was so happy. They got married, and it just, well, of course, I'll just back up for a minute. I saw the very beginning as him controlling her when she wanted to go away. Excuse me, she wanted to go to Italy on her own for a week because she said, we've only known each other for 2 weeks. I don't know a thing about you.
right,
He's professing his love to her, and I want to marry you. And she's like, I don't know a thing about you, and I just need time to think. So she goes on the train to Italy, and as soon as she gets off the train, there he is waiting for her. He doesn't let her alone for 1 second. And I thought that was the beginning of his control over her, that he didn't even allow her the time she wanted by herself, that he was that obsessed with getting back into that house and getting those jewels, that was the beginning of his control over her.
yeah, I think he follow. I mean, it's very stalky behavior. I won't say
Mm,
that, and he is
yeah.
very controlling in this. I think it was ultimately he wanted to make sure that she did not lose interest, like she didn't have a second
Hmm.
thought
Hmm.
when she was in Italy, because his intentions were very clear about getting back into the house. And
Yeah.
don't want to do a spoiler on it, but I guess
Well,
his intentions in getting back into the house were more than his intentions about how he cared about Ingrid Bergman and Paula in that role. Angela Lansbury.
hmm,
I forgot when I started watching the film that she was in this. And
I
she
did
comes
too.
in as a kind of cockney, maid who's applying for a job. And I'm like, who is this person? And,
Mm-hmm.
her facial features were so striking, and her acting was so striking at that initial piece. And then I'm like, oh, yeah, that's Angela Lansbury. Do you have any comments
Because
on?
yeah, when we talked about this doing this movie last week, you were reading through the actors, and you said Angela Lansbury, and I went like, what? And of course, I did the same thing. I thought, where was she in this movie? Um, and then, of course, when I watched it, I'm like, oh yeah, she was the one maid, and she was only 17 when she
Mhm.
started the movie. And there's a scene where she lights the cigarette for Charles Boyer, and they had to wait till she was 18 in order to do that because they
Yeah,
wouldn't allow her to do it at age 17. And they said they actually had a birthday party for her, and the cast and everyone celebrated her 18th birthday. But yeah, she was I think that was her first role,
yeah,
and that's
yeah. It
kind of
was.
what launched her career.
She was a waitress in Hollywood at
Mm.
a restaurant, or worked in a store, and she told her boss, "Hey, listen, I'm going to leave next week.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
I've got another job." And I think she was being paid $27 a week, is what I read.
something like
And the
that.
boss
Yeah,
said, "Well, I can try and do something better if you'll stay." And she's like, "I'm getting paid 500 a week,
yeah,
to
yeah,
to do this movie."
yeah. I heard
Um,
that.
do, I always, and I watched the film. I didn't make all the connections, so I'm glad this is familiar to you.
Hmm.
I kind of felt, well, there are scenes where it's like, this is creepy. She really is trying to get in Charles Boyer's affections
Oh
with some of the
yes.
statements. But
Oh
I
yes.
always I always felt that she was a big part of the plot. Like she was in on it with Charles Boyer.
Well, she always went out in the evening. So, and the other maid, the cook, was hard of hearing. So if you
Ah,
remember Paula, the one scene she was screaming for her to come, Elizabeth, 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 come upstairs. I need you. And Elizabeth just kind of casually walks up the stairs. She's like, what do you need, ma'am? And she said, I'm so tired. I need you to help me.
right.
And the lights started to dim in her room. And she said, Elizabeth, did you see that? And she said, yes, I saw that. And she said, well, what do you think that is? Why are the lights going down? And Paula's getting frantic about it. And Elizabeth says, well, ma'am, there's gas in the pipes, and maybe there's more gas in some pipes than others. And so she kind of dismisses it and acts as if, that's just a natural occurrence. And there's all this noise going on upstairs in the attic above Paula's room. And of course, she doesn't hear it because she's hard of hearing. And you're right, if Nancy, who was Angela Lansbury, had been home, she would have been able to validate some of Paula's concerns. But she's never home. She's out with the policeman or some other guy on the street. And so her absence, I think, contributes to the plot that you know
Yeah.
Paula is alone. There's no one there to help her. She's just alone with her own thoughts and fears, and she's becoming increasingly afraid to be in her own home.
Um, I thought before watching this film and then reading about it that I was trying to figure out the term gaslighting. And I thought, well, surely they just chose that as a title because it had the meaning
Because of
that
the
we're all
lighting.
familiar with.
No.
It was the defining movie that generated
Yes.
that term to
Yes.
describe psychological manipulation and control.
Yes. In fact, where did I see it was Webster's? Where was that? Something about Webster's dictionary. Oh, I'm going to have to look for that. Um, it was the word of the year in a certain year because of
Hmm.
this film. Yeah, I don't remember where that was. Oh, there it is. Um, the verb to gaslight was Merriam-Webster's word of the year in 2022, to gaslight someone. So, yeah, how about that? Um,
Uh,
Go ahead.
yeah, I was going to say, Ingrid, just some awards.
Mm-hmm.
Ingrid Bergman won the Academy Award for Best Actress. Charles Boyer was nominated for Best Actor. I'm curious who he
Mm-hmm.
lost to, and I think I could probably find that out. Joseph Cotten was nominated also. Angela Lansbury as Nancy Oliver was had an Oscar nomination for Best Supporting Actress, and
Mm-hmm.
Cedric Gibbons and the team won for Best Art Direction. That's the
Mm-hmm.
interior art direction in black and white, which is
Mm-hmm.
again based on the film.
Yeah.
And I think that's it. It's also
Which?
listed in AFI's 100 Years and 100 Thrills of
Mm-hmm.
films, but it's listed at 78. So a little
Hmm.
bit down the list, at
Yeah.
least according to AFI.
What did you think of the character May Whitty as Miss Bessie, the little nosy
Uh,
neighbor?
I was trying
Any
to figure
impressions on
out.
her?
Yeah, I was trying to figure out, is she just there for comic relief, or does
Mm-hmm.
she have actual plot things? And she does talk. Her gossiping gets the attention of the police of Joseph
Yes.
Cotten.
Yes.
And she gets it. She walks into the house one time, and I think they don't want her there. And it looks like she's ready to go upstairs and find out what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I just she was. I first on the train I thought this is comic relief,
Mm-hmm.
but then she starts to talk about where she wants to move, and she's going to go to London. It's the same neighborhood square that
Mm-hmm.
was Ingrid Bergman's childhood home, where
Right.
the murder occurred, and so she then has she not only has plot, but she also has place in
Yeah.
the
She
evening.
said she loved a good murder. She was reading a
Yeah,
book, and she said, "My brother calls me bloodthirsty Bessie." And yeah, she knew a lot about where Paula lived and where the murder took place. And she said, I can show you the exact room where it happened. And, Paula's like, I already know all that without, telling her who she
telling you.
was. Yeah. And you're right. She just wanted to get in that house and see what was going on.
Yeah,
And
and
she says,
the
well, three times in the movie. That's really her big line was, well.
well,
She says, well, when she sees Paula get off the train kissing, Gregory. Oh, well, like, big surprise. What was that? And then when she's talking to uh, the policeman, Joseph Cotten, and she's trying to tell him everything that she knows, and he's not interested, he's not listening, and he walks away from her, and she goes, well, and she's disgusted, you weren't listening to me. And then again at the very, very end of the movie, when Joseph Cotten and Ingrid, or I guess they must have walked out on the attic. I was trying to figure out where that last scene was. They open up the
hmm,
doors, it's nighttime, they're out on that little balcony, and they're embracing. And she comes up, she finally gets into the house and she sees him. She goes, wow. Like, oh, now I know what's going on. That was her big line was, well. Hmm.
yeah. So she had to practice that in front of a mirror with three different intentions.
Yeah.
One of
Yeah.
shock,
Three different
one
times.
of
Yeah.
oh well, and
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
it's interesting. That's interesting.
Yeah.
I noticed something at the end of the film,
Okay.
uh, and that this really struck me. It is when um, Charles Boyer is. I might have been tied up
Mm-hmm.
in the attic, uh, but he's giving an expose on why he did what he did. And his
Yeah.
eyes are like wide open, and they
Mm-hmm.
have off in one sight probably a reflection from a gaslight, or what it's supposed to be is a gaslight, but you can see it flickering in the reflection in his eyes.
Hmm.
And I could not, I mean, I noticed that and then noticed it through the whole exposition where he's talking about it. And he's kind of demonstrating his
Interesting.
own obsessiveness and craziness in that process. And
Yes.
his eyes are wide open, and the
Huh.
lights flickering off in
Yeah.
both eyes on one corner as a reflection. And that was the kind of touches that I think Cukor could think about when shooting a film, that made this really little things that kind of set the mood. He really truly looks crazy.
Oh,
And
absolutely. And he
not
had such
not to the
just his
definitive I'm going to
expressions.
do
No,
this,
no. It
but at
was
the
a
end his yeah.
like a I know what I'm doing and I just don't care. He was
Yeah.
obsessed with getting those jewels. When they were at the Crown Jewels, that one time that they went out, that he took her out and they went to the Crown Jewels, he somehow knew where the Crown Jewels were. And
Hmm.
she said, "Well, how would you know that? You've never been here." And he said, "Oh, don't you remember, Paula? They told us that." And of
Yeah.
course, he did know where the Crown Jewels were. And he's reading this little brochure about them. This is the white diamond, and this is the this and that, and he is getting more and more and more obsessed. And he even lost focus almost of where he was. He was almost like in a trance. He was so obsessed looking at these jewels. And in that particular scene, of course, the jewels are in this protective cage. They show his face behind the bars. And I thought, okay, that's a subtle reference to the very end where
Yeah.
he's arrested and taken away. His face is
Yeah.
behind bars.
Foreshadowing
Yeah,
in the movie.
yeah, yeah. He was cruel, and like you say, not in a violent way, but he had a calm, almost that was almost worse for me. The calmness about him, that the deliberateness of it, how he um how he gaslighted her,
Yeah.
just through his actions and his words. And maybe this is me thinking as a woman, but to me, he talked to her like a child. He would say, "Paula, sit
Hmm.
down. Paula, come here. Paula, go to your room." And I'm thinking, that's not the way a husband speaks to his wife. It was very demeaning, very condescending. He embarrassed her in front of the servants. Um, yeah, it was just such a mind control. And that's the part, again, that bothered me the most, to see her deteriorate and doubt herself, because she was such a strong person. But then, of course, we know in the end, everything was reversed. I don't know if we'll talk about that or not, but in the
Yeah.
end, she does regain her sanity and turns it
Yeah. I think
against
we
her.
we we should let the viewers and
Yeah,
listeners know.
yeah.
In a sense, there is a climactic scene at the end where you can't tell if she's crazy or she's so
Hmm.
sane she's acting crazy.
Yeah, yeah.
And that just trips up
Hmm.
uh, her Charles Boyer, and he doesn't know what to expect.
Doesn't know what to make of it.
What's going to
Yeah,
happen next? She picks up a knife, and
yeah.
you don't know what's going to happen next. Is this
No,
her
because
playing? Yeah,
was she mad? And she's saying, "Am I mad?" Or yes, is she mad or is she sane? Yeah,
yeah.
it
I
was
mean,
it was.
the subtle changes that she does, the lighting throughout the
Hmm.
movie, where you see her get more and more in her facial expressions, more and more someone
Yes.
who's delving into her own question of
Yeah.
sanity. And then that climactic scene at the end, I think that kind of stuff was the Academy Award winning reason why
Mm-hmm.
she got why
Mm-hmm.
she got the award, because that,
Yeah.
that 2 or 3 minutes of film is just incredible in terms of her acting and her,
Mm-hmm.
her kind of manic stuff that's going on that leaves us a
Right.
little, I get a little worried for her
Yeah.
at that point, that she's going to do something and she is going to wind up in an asylum
Mm-hmm.
because of
Mm-hmm.
how she's acting. But I think she had pieced that all together with her connection with Joseph Cotten
Joseph
and
Cotten.
the information that he gave.
And of course, the one Elizabeth, the cook, at the end, she does help Paula because
Yeah.
do you remember when Gregory comes back and finds his desk unlocked and he says, Paula, did you unlock my desk? And she says, no, I did not, which is true. She did not.
Yeah.
Joseph Cotten did. And then he calls in Elizabeth and he says, Elizabeth, you must have left him in the house. And she says, no, I didn't. He said, well, you must have. You must have left him in the house. And she says, no, sir, I didn't let him in the house. And Paula looks at her like, what do you mean? What do you mean? Of course you left him in the house. So in that way, she's helping Paula.
Gaslight her husband.
Gasly. Yeah. So yeah, that was a very interesting twist, I thought. They don't really
Yeah.
talk about that, but that's what's happened. And
Yeah.
Joseph Cotten says, whatever you do, please be on her side. Keep her best in mind. And she says, I will. And so she comes to her rescue in the end. Yeah.
So do you have any? I mean, I know you've delved into this much further than I have, so I'm
Yeah.
going to lay it open for you
Sure.
for any comments
All
that
right.
you have or pieces.
Okay.
That
Well,
you
this
missed.
one you'll probably think is crazy. And I said to myself, okay, Cindy, you're losing your mind. You're watching the movie Gaslight and you're losing your mind. The whole time Charles Boyer is speaking, and of course he's French, and Paula, the way he says Paula, he really emphasizes the P. Paula, Paula, Paula. I can't even do it. And I thought, who does he sound like? He almost sounded like a caricature of someone. It was so in my mind, I thought it doesn't even sound almost like a real person. And I went back and I looked it up, and Pepe Le Pew. Yep.
Okay.
Pepe,
All right.
Pepe Le Pew. Mm-hmm.
Now you've probably ruined the movie for everybody who hasn't seen it yet.
Well, I looked it up, and it says the actor Charles Boyer is the inspiration for the character Pepe Le Pew.
Le Pew. Oh.
His portrayal of the character Pepe Le Moka, Moko, in a 1938 film, Algiers, served as the basis for the voice and the personality of the Warner Brothers skunk character. And if you think about it, that little skunk, he was always pursuing that poor little cat, little black and white cat that had a stripe down his back because it got in some paint. And he was a very romantic little skunk, and he was always after this cat. And he had a French accent, and he just wouldn't let her alone. And I thought, that's just like Charles Boyer. I couldn't help it.
Oh, that's interesting connection. I mean, you drilled down to find out that.
But I kept thinking he sounds like someone else. And I loved those cartoons as a child. So, yeah. So, some things that I saw, did you see any inconsistencies? There were not many in this film, but there were a few. So,
no,
anything that didn't make sense?
The
Probably didn't
continuity,
have
I
time.
didn't pay attention enough with it to do the continuity.
All right.
What did
Well,
you find?
one in the beginning, when they first come to the home, and of course it had been all boarded up for all those years, and it's dusty, and the furniture is covered, and he goes over to the piano, and she says, "Oh, this piano is going to need tune badly," and they uncover it, and he sits down and he plays it in perfect tune.
Yeah.
And that's when, of course, and he's also playing her aunt's favorite song, which is, again, the beginning of his gaslighting her. And she says, well, where did you hear that song before? Because that was her aunt's favorite. And that's also when they find the letter. And that's the first time that he gets visibly angry with her, that she starts reading that letter that was sent a couple of days before her aunt's death. And of course, he sent the letter as a young boy, and he grabs it from her. He rips it from her hand, and he crumples it, and he puts it in his pocket. And then later at the end of the movie, she finds that same letter in his desk, and it's folded like in half and half again. And she unfolds it and says, this is the same letter. And then they compare it to the note that her husband wrote when they were not going to be able to attend that one performance.
Yeah.
And they compare the handwriting and see it's the same thing. So the letter was crumpled and shoved in his pocket in the beginning of the movie, but at the end, it's neatly folded and she unfolds it and reads it.
Yeah, but if you look at it, because I remember her holding the letter in the end, you can see that it's creviced in a way, even though it was. But the question is, if you crumple a letter up, do you then flatten it out and then do a trifold on it, for that purpose? But so some inconsistency there. But you go back and take a look at that. It does look like there's wrinkles in the flat letter.
Okay. Nancy and Elizabeth are coming up the stairs holding big stacks of sheets. And Elizabeth she's still holding her sheets, and they cut to Nancy, and she's looking up the stairs as if she hears something or sees something, and she's no longer holding her sheets. The sheets have just disappeared.
Okay.
I watched that too. That was 2-3 times. And then at the end of the movie, she's out in Nancy again. She's out in the street with a policeman. And of course, the other maid, the cook, Elizabeth, opens the door and hollers for him to, we need help, because they're having this struggle up in the attic. And Nancy is seen mouthing something, like a whole sentence, but nothing comes out. She's across the street and she says something, she yells something, but that's never part of the dialogue. Nothing ever comes out. I did see that 2 or 3 times. The other one was the picture, that missing picture that was on the wall. And of course, because it had been hanging there for so long, the wallpaper has, faded, and you can see the mark of where the picture was. And Gregory says to her, Paula, go find that picture. And she goes up the stairs and finds the picture. It's oriented 2 different ways. If you look at it on the wall, and of course he turns the lights on, the gas light on, when he's asking the maid to find what's missing in the room to help her find it. It's oriented like a portrait orientation.
Right.
But when Paula finds the picture and takes it out from behind that statue, whatever that thing is, it's oriented like a landscape.
Yeah.
It wouldn't have fit in that space. It would have been oriented differently.
It also seemed like much larger picture.
Had a big frame.
To what was on the wall. Yeah. I noticed the picture size difference. I didn't notice the orientation change.
The orientation was different.
That's a big picture for the small space that's on the wall. As I would have imagined it.
Yeah. And then just one last thing. I rewatched it a couple of times. In the end, when they have the dress, that big heavy dress with all the jewels on it, and Joseph Cotten is having the confrontation with Charles Boyer in the hallway. He drops the dress. At one point, I thought he kind of threw it over the balcony, but then in another scene, he drops the dress down. Might have been when they were struggling, I'm not sure. And they struggle, and the gun goes off, and the gun lands on the floor. And then Paula comes over And the gun is right there. There's no sign of that dress ever again. It's like, what happened to that big dress with all the jewels and everything on it? It's
Hmm.
nowhere to be seen
Hmm.
anywhere in that hallway.
Interesting.
That's, yeah,
Good
there were
eye.
not as many things in this movie. I really tried hard to find some more, but it was pretty good in that respect.
Well, I'll tell you, you're going to have a longer film to look at next week because
Okay. How long
you
is it?
gave. Let me see if I can find that out. To runtime 3 hours and 47 minutes.
Oh boy, I better get busy. Okay.
We are looking next, our next episode, we're going to look at a film that you haven't seen, and it's Lawrence of Arabia.
Mm-hmm.
1962, it's kind of at the end spot of where the golden age of cinema is. They always say Cleopatra from 64 is what kind of killed the studio system. But of course, Lawrence of Arabia, it's a war adventure, but it really is a character study of T.E. Lawrence as played by Peter O'Toole. So a good film. It'll be interesting to see how you adjust to this, whether the character development, there are war scenes in it. There are things that
Mm-hmm.
are kind of considered more traditionally things that there's not a, well, I want to say there's a lot of war scenes in it, but the engagement of the main characters, Peter O'Toole, Alec Guinness, Omar Sharif, Anthony Quinn, Jack
Mm.
Hawkins, Jose Ferreira, the dialogue and the communication and the wit in this film, I think you'll appreciate it. And then there's the impact of the storyline, and uh, it's about culture, and it's about
Mhm.
colonization, and it has some modern themes in it that way.
I feel like I may have seen parts of it, or maybe I'm sure once I start watching it, I'll say, "Oh yeah, I may have seen this part." Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, it is like you say, it's such a classic movie. Maybe I watched parts of it, but not all of it. I don't know.
Okay. So it'll be interesting to see what you think of Lawrence of Arabia. I will
Mhm.
sit through it again. I've probably seen it 8 or 9 times.
Wow.
I am a fan of Peter O'Toole. He's one of the actors that I can pretty much watch in anything.
Yeah, I
And
believe I've
this
seen him. Hmm.
and David Lean is such a cinematographer that I think this is sort of shot in widescreen, and there are some scenes in here that it's if you're watching it on a smaller screen, that's fine, but you
Hmm.
have to imagine what it would be like sitting in a movie
Mm.
theater with this in full projection.
Okay.
So yeah, Lawrence of Arabia from 1962. We'll cover that on the next show. Cindy, you always bring some amazing stuff to each one of the
Oh,
movies we cover. I
thanks,
mean,
Marty.
there's a love that you have for whatever fan. We'll see if you loved Lawrence of Arabia,
Yeah.
but there's a love
Well,
that you
I
bring. Yeah,
go ahead.
go ahead.
I think we're a good balance.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, we are a good balance for each other. Yeah.
yeah. So thanks for our audience for
Mhm.
joining us on Fade to Chat, the golden age of cinema. Be sure to subscribe to us on YouTube. Our YouTube channel is youtube.com/at fade to chat. And share your thoughts with us via email at thepodtalknetwork@gmail.com. And you can revisit any of the previous discussions that we have. We're on to this is our fourth episode.
Mhm.
And so we've covered some really fun films before this. And I know I've got some people who might want to join on because they have a favorite film, and
Oh, sure.
I'll try and set that up in the future, and we'll have a little more fun with this in
Yeah, that'd
terms
be
of
great.
classic films. So join us again, and we're happy to have you listen and or watch this. And we'll be talking more about films that continue to shape cinematic storytelling. So keep the projector rolling.